Hey guys, I wanted to come on here and talk to you all about choice points. There is a big upheaval happening, and it's been happening. For me, it's been happening since 2020. It's been happening my whole life, but it has increasingly picked up pace since 2020 and more so 2023. And now, right now, 2026, I'm really feeling it. And so I want to talk to you about choice points and how I have figured out how to navigate change, moving forward with my life, growth, healing, and transformation. And so my experience has been from a very young age that we are often faced with decisions and familiarity and the unknown. And you can always choose familiarity. When I was in high school, I remember sitting and talking to this kid that I was in class with, and he was telling me he was going to go into the army. And I had been in my own experience trying to figure out what I was going to do after high school because the traditional route was not working for me. We were both in an alternative high school. We had difficulty in the normal school setting, and so this young man was struggling with drug addiction, and he was telling me that his route, which could be the right thing for him, was probably the right thing for him. But I know, in my situation, I could have done the same thing, or I could have stayed at home because I actually had, like, on the outside looking in, a normal, functional household, which was not the case. It was a very toxic situation, and I knew I needed to leave. So what I had figured out was that I was going to ride freight trains, and I was going to make my way across the country, and I was going to dumpster dive, and I was going to, figure out, getting food, this and that, and so I began to study riding freight trains and, different alternative ways of living. I was looking into working on organic farms, woofing. I was looking at, even stuff like squatting buildings and stuff. Like, I was like really on the fringe. I was a big little rebel, you know, um, punk rocker kid. And that was, but that was my alternative. And like, I didn't know anybody who did that. I saw online people who did that, I had a friend in high school who, hung out with squatters in the city. I was outside of Detroit, and I was a part of like this punk rock, like, culture, but like I didn't have like friends who were in it with me. Really, I sort of did, but not to the extent that I was looking to go to take it, which was like, to live this kind of like fringe lifestyle, to get away from my home, and so it was kind of this exciting adventure, and it was also this really deep unknown. And so I finally, 2 years of studying riding freight trains and, buying books like, Duffy Littlejohn's Riding Freight Trains in North America, and talking to rail fans and like getting on websites. Anyways, I decided to make the jump, and I went and I caught a freight train out of Battle Creek, Michigan into Chicago at 18. and stayed with my brother's college friend in Chicago during the summer while he was back with his family, and didn't get farther than that. Came back, but on my second journey, I had my second attempt to ride a train. It was a year later. I had come back from Chicago that summer, and I had made sure that I graduated high school. So I graduated high school, and a friend of mine was visiting from college. His name was Andrew, and he was in Grand Rapids. I was in Detroit, and so he came to visit in Detroit. I went back to Grand Rapids with him with no money and no way of getting back to Detroit. And I was like, I'm going to catch a freight train. It was all like off the cuff, like I decided, we were hanging out one night. I decided, hey, I'm going to go back with you tomorrow in the morning. We said, cool. And I basically like got home late at night, got on the internet for like 2 hours, like researched the train yard in Grand Rapids, like looked up what I needed to, like all the information I could, you know, and then, I just saw Andrew the next day, and we took off to Grand Rapids, and for a week I hung out with him, and it came time for me to leave, and I was dreading it. Holy shit. I was so scared. And I, remember Andrew in the morning. We're in his loft, and he's like, lives down the street from the train yard, and he's like sitting in his easy chair. It's this big, like, high ceiling, like old warehouse kind of loft building in Grand Rapids. And I'm like, I guess I gotta go. And I'm like 19, 18, I'm like, put my backpack on. I have this hiking pack. And he's like, I'm like, I don't know about this. And Andrew looks at me, and he says, he was always this rock, man. And like, he wasn't doing it, but like, he was always just like, kind of like if you're in, he was like the taskmaster. He was always like, just kind of like held me accountable, and had good boundaries. And he was like, he's like, you gotta do it. And I was like, oh, fuck, you're right. I gotta do this. And I it was like the living room, and like big ceiling, and like big windows, like these old, like huge windows and brick wall. And he's sitting in there with all the sunlight pouring in. And then there's this dark hall to the back of the loft to the front door, where all the bedrooms were. And so I like left. I turned around, heel to toe, and walked down this dark hall and to the front door, and walked out the door, went down the elevator, and out to the street. And I walked up the street, and it was a gloomy, like kind of overcast, kind of cold day. It was springtime. And man, I was just like trudging, and like I got to this I had gone to Jimmy John's 2 days before and gotten 2 baguettes for like 10 cents each. So I had those in my backpack, and I had like a can of beans or something like that. And like I walk to this train yard, I go down the street, I'm in this train yard, man, and like so I just start to follow my instincts, right? I just start to follow my instincts. And my instincts have always served me so freaking well. Like I see, like, I can't go into the entrance, obviously, so I start like maneuvering around. Anyways, I find my way to the main line of the train yard, and I'm like sitting in this like brushy area, and I'm sitting in this brushy area in this like this ditch, kind of like with trees, kind of like a drainage ditch, but it's dry, and I'm just like chilling there, like waiting all day. Listening, I have like I'm chilling there waiting all day, and they're building this train in front of me. I'm just waiting for this train to be built, and it's going back and forth, and finally, as the sun's going down, because this took all day, I had to navigate the yard and like figure out where this main line was, and I was in the wrong place, and then I had to like sneak around, blah blah blah. It was stupid, but I figured it out. I was there, and forewarning, this is not legal, so I'm not condoning illegal activity at all. I'm not condoning riding freight trains. It's dangerous as fuck, and I did it because I was, it was a means to an end. I was like a really troubled kid with a difficult family situation. I needed to, figure out a way to get the hell out. But anyways, so desperate times calls for desperate measures, and whatever. That's life. So, but anyways, so like finally 9 o'clock rolls around, and this train like lights blare through the dark, and like it starts like pulling forward slowly. It stops, and then it pulls forward towards me a little more, and I'm just kind of like ushering it towards me. I'm like, come on, baby, come on. Like, like, let's do this shit. Come on. And like, it's like inching, and then it's just like stop, and then it stops, and then it starts to pick up, and then it starts to go. And it's like, it's going, but it's not like going fast, it's going like, it's in the yard. So it's like, it's crawling out of the yard finally. And the train cars, one by one. And I'm like, I pull out there, and I'm like sitting on the tracks, and I'm like looking for a rideable car, looking for a car that like grain car or whatever, and like one by one, finally there's a grain car with the right configuration for me to like grab it, and that is like a good car to like ride. And I like grab it, and I grab that thing, and I got it. I freaking got it, man. And I freaking climb up onto that car, man, and I like put my bag in there. I crawl into this little cubby hole that like this little cubby hole that is there, and I like I have some granola with me too. I've been like munching on my like food all day, my bread and whatnot, and I'm like, yeah, baby. I fucking did it. Well, I don't know if I did it or not yet, because here I am like on this random train, but I know that going east out of this yard, like the line goes through Lansing, and it goes into Detroit, goes into Plymouth, Michigan. So I'm like, okay, like we'll see what happens. And so I fall asleep, because it's like usually trains between like their destinations, it's usually like 6 hours, some shit like that, between stop times. And but this wasn't a stop. Like Detroit wasn't a stop, it was a reroute, because it was just like going through a thing called a diamond. So it's just rerouted north or rerouted south or reroute. It's like a train track formation, and it goes slow through there, so you can jump off. So that was my plan. So I had to be aware. It's like nighttime now. I had to be aware of when we get to Plymouth. And so, I'm like, I doze through the night. 6 hours, dozing through the night. And I wake up. Something wakes me up. And we are going through this underpass. And I just remember, as a kid, I grew up in North Detroit, but I remember as a kid just driving through the city with my parents and seeing landmarks. And so this interchange, this highway interchange that we're going through, I'm like, I wake up, I like had stuck my head out this cubby hole, and I'm like, we're by this warehouse, and I like look up at this interchange that we're going under, and I'm like, holy shit, are we here? And it's like 5 o'clock in the morning now. And so, yeah, I don't know, do the math, how long that was. I'm not going to sit here and do that. But anyways, it was crazy, uncanny. Like, it was like my instinct, like God, like an angel with me, something like that, was just like, hey, buddy, it's time to like wake up and be alert. And so I stick my head out, I crawl out onto this porch, and I'm like looking like, landmarks. Give me like a freaking like a sign, like a road sign, or a highway sign that tells me like a street, or like hey, Plymouth downtown here. And finally we're like crawling, we're going to this curve, and we're going through this downtown area, and I'm like looking around, and there is a billboard on the side of the road, and it says downtown Plymouth. And I'm like, holy shit. And like right as we're going into this curve, and we slowed down, but now we're starting to pick up speed, and we're getting quicker and quicker. I'm like, this is it. I toss my bag back off the train, and then I like dismount, like running alongside the train, and by golly, and I almost like run into braking equipment that I didn't see because it's pitch black out. Which would have been fucking, like, I could have really hurt myself or been like fallen into the train and been killed. So it's fucking dangerous. Don't do it. I mean, like, do what you have to do, whatever. But anyways, so I go back and grab my pack, and we're at this like actually road crossing. I like jumped off at a road crossing like right before it. Grab my pack, walk to the road crossing and wait for the train to pass. And it's so funny because like there's all these cars, there's several cars stopped on the other side of the train at the road crossing, and when the train clears, here I am with this pack just appeared at this road crossing. I cross and I go into this diner and I get some food, and what do you call it? I get some food, and I get like a veggie burger or something because I'm like vegan at the time. And then like I'm like and I'm like Sunday, so I'm there's no transit in Detroit, right? So I'm like, how am I gonna figure this out? I look at the I'm like, I'm gonna go find the library. I must have had like a map of, I don't know, I must have had a map of Plymouth that I printed off the computer, because this is a long time ago. We didn't have like smartphones and shit, or at least I didn't have a smartphone. I think Blackberries were the like most advanced thing that were out. And so, and I only had like a little like, dot dot dot, like small like flip phone. And I hated it. I didn't like using cell phones. And so like I found the library. I went to the library and I found this like this big evergreen tree in this corner of this of the library, where like I crawled behind it into this like corner of these two like brick walls, and I just fell asleep until like 9 o'clock, which was like glorious. It was like the most glorious sleep I ever had. I just crawled in my sleeping bag and was just like passed the fuck out. And I get so amazed like how I just got like such good sleep doing shit like that. Like, I don't know, like I'm a 37-year-old man now. Yeah, so I just did that, and seriously, bro, like I woke up and the library was just opening, and there were all these people sitting on the steps waiting for them to open the doors. I go up in there with my pack, and I like sitting on the computer, and I like go up to the like librarian, and I ask her, you know of any like bus schedules or like, you know, buses into the city? I'm like trying to get north, you know, and like she's like, it's Sunday. Like she's like, it's Sunday. I don't think the buses run on Sunday. I'm like, yeah, well, Detroit doesn't. The buses in Detroit don't really run pretty predictably anyway. So I don't know what the fuck. Excuse my language, but what I'm gonna do, and this gentleman who's sitting next to me at the computers takes notice of me, this young 19-year-old boy with a hiking pack in a suburb, a pretty like middle class, like upper middle class suburb of Detroit. It's like, what the hell is this guy doing? But not in like a judgmental way, but more in like a curious, like I want to help you way. And we start talking, and he's like, well, why don't I take you out for breakfast, you know, and maybe we could figure something out. And he seemed pretty nice, like he's nice. But I was, you know, I don't trust it. I was pretty smart enough not to just like freaking be like, okay, mister, you know. So I said, okay, let's do that. And so, you know, I cautiously throw my bag in his car, and we like go to the diner that I was just at earlier that morning. And he's like, you know, I could buy you a bag of food if you want to get something to eat here. I was like, you know, I'm not really that hungry. He's like, well, I could get you some food. He's like, or I could figure something else out. I was like, he's like, you know what? Or you know what? Maybe I could just drive you back up. I'll drive you to back up to North Detroit. And I was like, that would be awesome. And he's like, let's do that. And he's like, he turns out he's the sweetest man. Holy crap. And this is what happens when you take a chance on yourself and you trust the universe and you listen to your higher guidance and you say, hey, I am going to really honor my intuition myself. And so I say, all right, man, like, let's do it, you know? And I'm just like, I'm along for the ride, you know? I'm still on the edge of my seat. I'm still a little like, I don't know about this guy. And and so we go, and he tells me that he is a music director for a church, and that it's Sunday, and he's going to have to tell the priest, you know, that he's not going to be able to like work today. And he's like, I'm like, are you sure? Like, really? Like, is that cool? And he's like, no, it's fine. Like, don't worry about it. And I'm like, okay, like, you know, I felt kind of bad. But like, he was he was like, you know, like, don't worry, I got this for you, man. And I was like, okay. And I was like, you know, questioning his motives, because I was like, you know, like, wow, that's a big, you know, thing to do for someone that you just met and you don't know. And he's like, but first we got to go back. We got to go by my house because I got to feed my cats. I was like, okay. And so we pull into his house. I'm like, I'm not going in this guy's house. So, like that feels sketchy. And so he's like, so I just sat out in the car. He's like, you can come in if you want. Come on in. I was like, no, I'm going to sit here. Like, don't worry about it. He opens his garage door, goes in, you know, changes, feeds his cats, does what he has to do. Comes out, he's like, hey, come, like, you know, say hi to my cats. I was like, oh, okay, like, come to the edge of his garage, say hi to his cat, whatever. Still very cautious. Get back in his car with him. Cool. Like, shit doesn't get weird, thankfully. And we get in his car and we drive and we get on the highway and we start talking, and the guy's like, you know, he's like telling me about like when he was younger, you know, he's divorced, he doesn't have a wife. He's telling me about when he was younger. He was like, you know, I always thought like about going down to the train tracks and just catching a train, but like, you know, I always thought about it, but I never did it. and like, God, like you're making me wish I did it. you know so it's a little parable of like regrets and like growing old and like don't yeah like really like people will surprise you, like you will see people who have done things that you have wanted to do, and you will like it'll like life reflects to you like your decisions, so that's just another like takeaway. Life reflects to you your decisions. So start choosing, make choices that honor yourself. And so this guy is like telling me like he's like when I was younger, I was he's a musician, he's a music director, and he traveled throughout Europe, studying music and playing music. And there were times, he told me, when he didn't have any money and he had to like sleep in people's barns, like sneak in people's barns or sleep at train stations and shit. And so that was like really like, it was really humbling for me, because I was just a middle class white boy, from the suburbs of Detroit. And, I had a hard life. I had a, a hard family life, but like it wasn't apparent on the outside. It's like I never went without, as far as food, clothes, and shelter and shit like that. So this whole like experience was like kind of new to me, and like it was more of like an adventure and whatnot that I was embarking on. It was unknown. It was scary. It was hard. Um, and but anyways, so it was very humbling for me to hear this guy share. And when we get to um, the suburb where my friends lived, because I was gonna go stay with some friends before I went back to my parents' house. I I what do you call it? I get out of the car. He's pulling my backpack out of his trunk, which is something I usually, I knew not to like let people do. It's like, don't put your stuff in their trunk. Like, don't like don't compromise, your situation. Have your stuff with you if you're like traveling like that. Kind of be a little more discerning. But it was my first time, so I didn't know what was going on. But anyways, this guy he's pulling my stuff out of his trunk, and he turns around and he has a $20 bill in his hand, and he gives it to me. It's like, this is me giving it back. This is for the universe, and this is the universe, paying it forward to all those people who helped me along my journey. And I was so moved, because I didn't have money for food at that point. Like I was starving, by that time. Like I bought like a veggie burger, but like I had like not too much cash. And that was that. Anyways, I was like, I thanked him. I shook his hand. Maybe I gave him a hug. He was such a sweet gentleman. Never forget him. And Angel, and divine timing. God in the right place at the right time. You just like trust your instincts, trust yourself. People looked at me when I told them I was going to ride freight trains, and they said I was freaking crazy, and I freaking did it. And you know what's funny? I went back to visit my family after I made it across the country. I made it out to California. I set up a new life for myself, all off the skin of my own back, off the, off my own grit, and never asked anything from them. And, but a lot of people, angels, helped me along the way. And it was because I was honoring myself. I was getting myself out of a negative situation, and Spirit was leading me. And, that's my story. Like, And so I remember like seeing my dad, and I was out in California, like that, like I'm kind of jumping into a different part of my journey here. So I'm out in California now, and I go back to Detroit to visit my dad, and he's like, riding trains is dangerous. And it's like, I know. I do it. I actually, I know. You don't think? You don't think I know? I know 10 times way more than you how dangerous it is. And so all that's just like a parable for all the naysayers, all the scoffers, all the negative hoo-hars, all the like people who want to throw shade your way, all that shit. Like, man, they don't know because they never done it and they're too scared. And you know what? Like, the judgment and the fear, it's their own self-talk, and they need to project it on somebody, and so it's coming out at you. And that shit can live inside of you. You can let that dictate you, or you can decide, hey man, I'm gonna go your own way, go your own way. Or you can call it another lonely day. Oh. So you decide. You decide. You make that decision. And you know what? God is going to say and put obstacles in your way. He's going to give you initiations and challenges that are going to ask you to choose the unknown, the scary choice. Make you sit with your friend Andrew in his loft and be like, hey man, I don't know about this. And Andrew, the taskmaster, is going to look at you and be like, bro, you got to fucking do it. And you got to pony up, you know, because you got one life. You got one life, and you were put here on this earth for a reason. You were put here on this earth for a reason, and you have a mission, and you have people to touch, and you have lives to change, and you have people to help, and you have gifts to give. And that is my message to you today. So I hope you take it, and I love you, and God bless. And I'll see you next time. Peace.